and zoom in to Vanderbilt, heading over to Tuscaloosa, Alabama to take on the Crimson Tide. This game score ended up being 30-14. We got the team right in terms of who we picked to win, and that was Alabama. We thought it was going to be a 5-point difference. It kind of felt like that towards the end, as the Crimson Tide again were only getting drives that ended with field goals, but it was really the defense that put the nail in the coffin in terms of turnovers and kind of not allowing Vanderbilt to do what they did to them last year in Nashville. But this was one of the closest games in terms of what I was expecting to see, and had a lot of questions that were eventually answered by Alabama and why they won this game. One of the first questions we asked: will Vandy be efficient on third down again? Last year in 2024, when they matched up against Bama there at home, they were having a 66% conversion rate on third down. Going into this game, they were third in the country with a 59.46 percentage. Again, converting on third down, sorry. They were 5 for 11, which is that's not anywhere near technically that 59 or 66. Alabama kind of looked into that probably statistically and knew what they had to do, and they got that job done, and not allowing extended drives and not also allowing their defense to stay on the field for way too long. Remember, in that preview, we talked about Alabama's defense being on the field for more than twice the amount of time versus their opponents in the Commodores there in Nashville in 2024. That did not happen. It was 37 minutes and 23 seconds for Alabama possessing the ball, and then it was for the Commodores 22 minutes and 37 seconds. So a decent flip of the table there going into this. I think Kalen DeBoer and his staff saw that stat and was like, you guys, we got to change this. But also, you guys, we talked about Ty Simpson heating up. I think he had an all right game. It was mostly kind of the reestablishment of Jam Miller. 136 yards rushing, as he really complimented Ty Simpson in the passing game, who had 340 yards through the air. He was 23 for 31. Had his first interception of the season in this one against Vanderbilt, which is not too bad. You got to wait till all the way into week 6 for him to make a mistake like that. So he has been definitely heating up. Got a little too hot there through, again, his first interception. Also 2 touchdown passes to go along with that 340 yards. And then on top of that, he went 23 for 31 with his completion attempt rate there. But again, Jam Miller reestablishing himself back into this Alabama rushing game that was truly needed. They were extremely terrible back in week 1 and have somewhat progressed. Tried to do some makeshift moves there in the running back room since the absence of Miller. And honestly, I thought he was going to be out for a more extended time here in 2025, but he's healed up pretty well and actually came back last week, knocked the rust off, and came up big in this game to have that total of 146 on the ground to contribute from his 136. So that's good to see, as that is a player really that Alabama needed, not only in this game, but for the rest of the season. Another thing we mentioned going into this was Alabama's rush defense, who was 75th in the country. They were giving up 160.5 yards per game, and they were coming up against Vandy's 14th ranked rush offense. They're averaging 230 yards, and guess what? The Crimson Tide stuffed that run. There was a couple of electric plays from Cedric Alexander, who we have talked about in past preview and reviews, and a guy to watch out for Vanderbilt. So we were kind of expecting him to have a decent night. He had only 4 carries for 76 yards. He hit a big home run on the ground for 65 yards. He's kind of like the Swiss Army knife for this Commodores offense. But it was a lot of Diego Pavia keeping the ball himself in those read option plays. He had 12 carries for 58 yards. So decent amount of yards in terms of quarterback numbers. But when you don't have a running back room that can contribute, more than the 78 yards that they had, yeah, you're going to have a bad time. And again, a total of 136 on the ground for the visiting side. So Alabama executed in that department and not allowing Vanderbilt to do anything really on the ground effectively. It had to be Diego Pavia moving it through the air, and that was what kind of came down to this game. And we mentioned that things that would come down, and that was Diego Pavia's decision making. He technically kind of threw 2 interceptions, didn't register technically as well, as it was a flagged play on both sides of the ball, which means that it was, I think, a replay of downs, if I'm not mistaken, or it was like just a weird set of circumstances to not allow that second interception from him. But he did have a fumble in the red zone and an interception, so the decision making wasn't so good. That's something that Alabama capitalized on, and not allowing Vanderbilt to score those 3 to 7 points. Could have been more, and keeping this game close. One thing I got to give credit to was Vanderbilt's defense. They did an excellent job in slowing down Alabama after they got past the 50 and only having them settle for quite a few amount of field goals. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the kicker for Alabama missed one. He went 3 for 4 in scoring. Obviously, 9 points there, if I'm doing the math right. So that was kind of a big thing we were talking about, and it was kind of just weird because I didn't watch this game. I was watching the Boise Notre Dame game live while this one was going on, but then going back and watching the highlights of this, and like everything I said in that preview basically happened, or at least the things we had to look out for, and the coaching staffs, or at least the Crimson Tide addressed that. I think Clark Lee did, though, a good job going in on the road there, kept it tight up until obviously the halftime, but then Alabama pulled away, shutting out Vanderbilt there in the second half and not allowing them to score any points. Pretty impressive stuff. And on top of that, there were some injuries there in the defensive line for Bama, so that's even more impressive that their depth showed up there. Again, Alabama wins 30-14. We predicted a 5-point difference, and the guy that we thought was going to have a big game, that was Jeremiah Bernard. Well, he had 5 receptions for 82 yards and 1 touchdown, but it was mostly him and Ryan Williams. Had a great night or day for himself yesterday. 6 receptions for 98 yards and also got himself a touchdown. That was kind of the difference. A lot of slicing and dicing. Even Isaiah Horton, the transfer in from Miami, 4 receptions for 66 yards. Just well distributed through the air. When you have a running back that can complement and keep a defense honest, that's just combinations that not a lot of teams can deal with. And for what Vanderbilt did again for 4 quarters, I think they did a decent job. They just were not being rewarded there when the offense got the ball. And again, game came down to Diego Pavia's decisions, and unfortunately did not make the right ones. That is our first review as we zoom out.